Good afternoon to our prominent speaker, our distinguished guests, our friends, classmates and colleagues. My name is Andrew Park. I'm a lecturer in the School of Public Health at Hong Kong University. And today, on behalf of the school, I would like to welcome our lecturer today, who's giving our talk, is Professor Jesse Bump. He's lecturer on global health policy and the executive director of the Takemi program in international health, which is in the Department of Global Health and Population of Harvard University's T.H. Chan School of Public Health. And he'll be talking today on the political economy of global health in historical perspective. But first, we will let Professor David Bishai, the Director and Clinical Professor of the School of Public Health, on stage to give some welcoming remarks. Professor Bishai, please.
Thank you all for coming. It really gives me pleasure to have a talk like this on the campus at a Faculty of Medicine. We understand, all of us who've practiced public health understand that political economy is such an important part of what we do. Virchow said that medicine is a social science and politics is nothing but medicine on a grand scale. We see that so truly, and we've been living it. If you remember what we went through in 2020, 21, 22, political economy made such a difference on how everybody experienced the pandemic, but it's true even now, and we're so fortunate to bring this to our campus. We've been wanting to do more of this. We try to put it into our curriculum. We want our students in public health, as well as medicine, nursing, and pharmacy, to really think about both the grand scale political economy and the big picture of where have we been? How did we get here? And I'm so glad that we'll have a chance to think about that. Now, you don't have to leave right away. We're lucky enough, though, at 5 o'clock after the event is over, there's time for sharing, and please take a moment if you're interested and curious about the Takemi Fellowship Program. This is your moment to find out from the world's expert at the Takemi Fellowship. So I'm really glad you're here, and I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Thank you, Professor Bishai. Now I would like to pass the microphone to Professor Jane Zhao, Assistant Professor of the School of Public Health. She is a previous awardee of the Takemi Fellow, and she will introduce our speaker. Thank you, Professor Zhao.
Thank you very much for having. It's my great pleasure to introduce Jesse. As you know, I'm a Takemi Fellow last year. It's a really amazing journey. I would say about Jesse's introduction. I'm sure you already read on the website before your registration. So I want to say something that I see and I experience according to the stay in Harvard. Jesse, in my eyes, is a great mentor, amazing scholar, and also a very dedicated teacher to the students. And in his, he pays so much care to every fellow in Harvard. And also, I'm her student. I'm his student. I took his class. It's really impressive to me that every student in his class can be the main character. So he's so humble. He makes his class the space for people to express their opinions and to show their curiosity for knowledge. And also, I'm so grateful to be there to learn from him and to learn from the discussion from the students. It's a really wonderful journey. And so I remember in the last class when we want to we say our feedback to summarize what we have learned from this course. I remembered I said I'm so grateful to be here because I know not everyone has the opportunity to be here to take the course. So I'm so grateful to have Jesse here to learn from his seminar. That's a kind of taste of his wonderful teaching. And I hope everyone can enjoy this seminar and hope you can learn something from this seminar. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for Jesse being here.
Thank you, Professor Zhao. So we would now, without further ado, invite Professor Jesse Bump on stage for his talk.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You guys didn't have to come. I'm so happy. Okay, good. I've got a couple of questions. So you're studying public health, right? And you're doing that because you want to help people? Big mistake. Okay, I'm going to show you why. And the point of our discussion today is I want to show you what direction we're heading. So imagine like the whole school is moving. You can say that, right? It's moving in a direction and you're sitting in it. It's very hard to know what direction it's going in at that scale because you're inside. You don't feel it. The world around you is defined by the forces that I'm going to show you, and you won't like them. Sorry. I hope you can ask a few questions as we go along. I like questions. They're a sign that you're thinking, maybe even engaging. Yeah? Maybe? Any thinking going on? Not yet? Okay. That's fine. It's early. So here's what we will do. I'm going to talk about recent events in global health. And I'm going to ask you what they mean. And then I'm going to show you where they come from. And then we can talk about what to do about it. Ready? Excellent, excellent. Okay. So, recent events in global health. March of this year, the Trump administration on Friday moved to formally dissolve the United States Agency for International Development. Yeah? You guys saw that, right? It was global news. There was, despite the unilateral shutdown being deemed unconstitutional by a federal judge. That means court said you can't do that. He did it anyway. These things happen. You know, like countries invade each other. They don't ask, they just do it. And sometimes they take things. And they keep them. This is still happening. But the world's largest funder of global health aid, USAID, paid about $40 billion a year, and all gone. So this was in March, and by July, that entire government agency dissolved. It's not there anymore. The thousands, tens of thousands of people who work there, not there anymore. I'm not here to tell you that that was the best aid agency. I actually didn't like USAID. But, you know, shutting it down without comment illegally, you know, that's an extreme step. Here's another one. February of this year, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that the UK would raise its defence spending to 2.6% of gross domestic product in 2027 by reducing aid spending from 0.5 of GNI to 0.3. You see what this means, right? It's like, I had this money, I was going to do something helpful with it, like redistribute it. Whether it's helpful or not, don't worry about that yet. We'll just say, I had this money, I was going to give it away for what I think are humanitarian purposes, and now I'm going to put it in defense. It's not settled, right? It's right there. It's in the record of the UK Parliament. That's the plan. That's what he's going to do. And as recently as 2020, the UK was meeting its self-pledged target of 0.7% of GDP for redistributive purposes through international aid. So we've gone from 0.7 to 0.3, and this most recent reduction is explicitly for more defense spending. Yeah, you like that? We're going in the right direction. I don't know, just think about it. Your lives are tied up in this. What this means is money is going out of your ecosystem. You know, jobs that would be supported this way, aid to people you care about, aid to charities. I'm not telling you that this is the right way to do redistribution, but I'm telling you that's how we do it, and less money is coming in. So next time you think of humanitarian projects in places that have, say, natural disasters, there will be less money for that. So we went to the US, the UK, and look at this. Here's a report this year from the OECD in Paris. You know, they study the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's a rich nations club, and they keep track of donor spending. So the OECD projects a 9 to 17% drop in official development assistance in 2025. That's after a 9% drop in 2024. So this is across the 30 richest countries, 30, 31. Okay, they gave 9% less in 2024, and this year they will put between 9 and 17% less into international aid. I want you to think about drawing a conclusion here. This decline between 24 and 2025 is the first time in history that the 4 biggest donors have had year-on-year declines for 2 years in a row. Okay, so US, UK, Germany, and France, they all cut their aid budgets. So, Trump supporters, do you guys like Trump? Everybody knows Trump, right? And he's super popular because he's got these tariffs that benefit everybody. And he loves humanitarian stuff. Okay, whatever. Yes?
But then in Trump's defense, if he's trying to invest money to his country, but by drawing all the money to invest in plants, to invest in, let's say if Trump uses these money to create better jobs for Apple.com, or like Microsoft is building some plant in Texas, wouldn't this actually improve health to some extent? That's what the media says, at least.
Who's media?
Like, if you take a look at Trump commentary,
Okay.
like if he talks to the press in the Oval, he actually previously talked to Tim Cook, and he said like Tim Cook actually invests $400 million in Texas. Wouldn't this bring income and to save its people from high costs before spending the money in other countries?
Okay, so, Apple announced that investment in Texas manufacturing last year. They just decided to do it again, right? Because they knew he would like it. So I don't think that really changes anything. Also, and I appreciate that question. Can I get another question? Oh, this is a answer. Yes.
Great answer. Okay, so Trump won the vote fair and square. Brilliant. This is what people voted for. He's got the mandate from the American people to do this. Okay, that you may say the political system is not the best and voting, but he won. So should we be fighting this, or should we be accepting, this is what the people wanted?
Or do you have a choice? Okay, I love these questions. This is great. Okay, but you have a world going to hell out there, and you're in here studying like medicine and public health. You just want to go along with it? I mean, that's wild. If you really want to advance humanity, if you're serious about public health, you have to fight for it. There isn't anybody out there defending public values. When it's really easy, then you're not needed. So just think about it. Right? You should do something. You should live according to your values. So if those values include a service to humanity or the advancement of public interest, then you'll have to fight for it. You will. Like, I'm not telling you that you have to. It's just if you want it, you have to fight for it.
I'm just saying, from a non-American viewpoint, many people would say the Americans, poor life expectancy, terrible healthcare service.
Yep.
Should get their own house in order before telling everybody else what to do.
Yeah, but still, it's a really big economy and it likes to boss the world around. So, I mean, that's a valid criticism, but they don't care. I mean, you have the world you have. You don't have the one you want. You have the one that's out here. And in that world, 4 major countries, plus on average, everybody in the OECD is reducing the amount of money they want to spend putatively on the benefits of other people. I don't know, maybe I took something for granted, but do you guys like that? Is this a good development? Maybe. I came in maybe you're not even public health students, but I kind of thought you would be. Yes? No? Medicine? Yeah?
In principle, I don't like it, but the question is how much we were relying on this.
how much we were already relying on these countries to support all the aids. I mean, I don't like that them are making the cuts, but maybe the model that we've had before, it was too much, based on the aids of these countries instead of, having a better arrangement across the world in terms of everyone giving whatever they can to support the aids.
It's totally fair. I would tell you immediately that the system of redistribution, the stuff we do that's called aid, is largely ineffective. And it's structured such that it will never achieve its stated goal of equality. It just won't do that. But you don't get to start from zero, you start from where you are. So starting from where you are means you do have this system of ostensibly charity-based redistribution that ostensibly, in the eyes of the donors, goes toward furthering humanitarian objectives. I'm just claiming that that world is ending. And I want to talk about what it is supposed to do and why it's ending. You won't like what comes next if you don't contest it. I mean, as bad as the post-World War II order of international aid has been for development, and I didn't prepare to defend that with slides, but if you looked at the difference between the colonized countries and the metropolitan countries around the time of independence, and then you compare it to now, those countries are not equal. Stuff that some countries stole has not gone back to the places it was stolen from. I mean, in Hong Kong, there's particular salience to that discussion, right? So the base state where all people have the same chance in life and all states have sovereignty over their resources and they can all do what they want. Like, we don't live in that world. We're starting from a really different place. We are starting now in a modern world that's unfair and unequal. And within that, without making a move to do better, the major donors are just saying, well, we're going to do less of what we've been doing. They aren't saying, we're going to take this money or some other money and put it into a reparations fund for countries that have been pillaged over the years. We're going to say sorry for the misdeeds that we've commissioned, and we're going to make it right. Like, none of these countries are saying that. What they're saying is, we're just going to keep it for ourselves. I think, I made this list for you, I think the forces that shape global health are fundamentally shifting. Like they're ending. Like, you're going to see a new era. And I justify that by saying, we see donor disengagement, there's a reduced commitment to multilateralism. A couple of countries, including my own, have withdrawn from WHO. And most countries have, kind of sort of given up on its effectiveness. There's not a whole lot of community spirit at the international level. There's an expansion in military spending, increasingly nationalist politics, decline in humanitarian concern, reduced solidarity, increasing anti-migrant sentiment. You can debate me on individual countries, but I'm going to say the ones that matter from an aid perspective are those who have resources that don't belong to them. And they're doing these things. So this is one way to historicize some past eras. I drew this up to help explain the different attitudes that what we call donor and recipient countries have had over the years. So before the Berlin Conference of 1885, it's just sort of an almost arbitrary date, the countries we call donors, they were fighting with each other. That was colonial warfare. You guys should remember that. I mean, not because you were alive, but because it was incredibly influential. The rich countries were fighting with each other. It's not just it doesn't end with the Berlin Conference, right? There's the Russo-Japanese War, there's the Sino-Japanese War of particular importance in this region, but the colonial powers were fighting with each other. And then they decided to stop. They decided to collude with each other. They said, I'll steal from here, you steal from there, and we'll make peace with each other so we can better oppress other parts of the world. Right, that's a collusion, a collusive agreement, arrangement between what we're now calling donor countries, and it's coercive toward the countries that were being colonized. After World War II, colonialism's economic foundation no longer worked very well. In Africa, the way this played out is that in World War I, the main colonizers needed more troops to fight in their war, and they promised health and education benefits in exchange for that service. And then they didn't do it. In World War II, the same thing happened, and the indigenous people again demanded health and education in exchange for service, and the colonizers didn't do it. So they said, well, we know you guys deserve all these things, so just take the country. That's what they did. Instead of actually paying back money that had been borrowed, instead of paying the pensions that soldiers had earned, and instead of making good on the social policy promises that had been made, the colonizers left. Essentially to avoid paying for a debt that they felt was unaffordable. Independence was the answer. And at independence, they maintained the economic arrangements they had made for themselves. So when there was a colonial government, don't think that's like a government of the people of the territory. That's just someone from the metropole who's sitting over here and saying, I'm in charge of this place. So they make a deal with themselves, essentially, and then they keep that deal. So think about like extractive resource contracts. How much would a mining company pay to the country of origin? What would fair wages look like? What's the trade regime? Those things arranged between colony and metropole got grandfathered in at the request of the colonizing countries into international trade agreement. So they just got rid of social policy by declaring independence for the former colonies and maintained the extractive economic arrangements. So this shift from coercion to collaboration, I've called it paternalism. Because it's not an actual independence, it's just a kind of, it's what Nkrumah called neocolonialism. So at the time I made this, a few years ago, I thought, well, what if you made, what if you made donors compete with each other? And this happens naturally. Sometimes there are countries where all the donors want to be present, and this happened in Ghana and Rwanda, it happened in India. For a while there are lots of donors, and the recipient country can tell them what to do. So you really want to be here? Well, go over here and do this. Usually that doesn't happen. Usually donors do what they want. So I was suggesting, well, what if they were to compete with each other? What this slide does not represent is what's happening right now. And that is the donor countries don't want to do it at all. That's the abandonment scenario. So they will keep their economic arrangements and go home. That means the relationship that formerly has underpinned some kind of international activities for mutual benefit means that won't happen. And it means that the recipient countries are going to lose leverage over what happens in their own countries. So I want to tell you now a story about the role of global health in these geopolitical transformations. So this is colonial warfare. It was called military medicine in those days. This is an engraving from Florence Nightingale's hospital in what's now Üsküdar in Istanbul. It's a neighborhood of Istanbul on the Asian side. So there she is. She's best known as a nurse. I think she's ought to be more famous as a statistician. So she's one of the world's leading historical statisticians. And what she did is to, in this case, she took statistics about things happening in the hospital. When the windows were open, when they were closed, the different conditions are there. So she could figure out the correlations between healthful practices, like how tightly could you space beds, how much ventilation did you need. Here she is figuring that out. Figuring out what the organization of a hospital should be so that it stays healthy. This is the next one. In colonial medicine, in colonialism that is, there was a new academic specialty. It emerged to satisfy the needs of colonization. It was called tropical medicine. And all of the rich countries founded schools of tropical medicine. You know Patrick Manson, right? You have a building for him. That's exactly what he was doing. He's the founder of the London School, too. Right? This is his idea. You shouldn't like him. You should not name a building after him. Like his whole idea about medical research is how to do it as cheaply as possible and in the least viable public health way. Right? That's transmission interruption. Right? You don't improve the land. You don't do housing. You don't do education. You don't do nutrition. You just kill an insect. Like, that's the secret to tropical medicine. It's make health as cheap as possible so it doesn't disrupt extractive activities. So look, this is the Royal Tropical Institute in Amsterdam. This is from its website. So I didn't make this up. This isn't even the most sanitized version you could get. It's what they're saying about themselves. What they said is the Royal Tropical Institute was founded in 1910 as the Colonial Institute to study the tropics and promote trade and industry in the colonial territories of the Netherlands. It was founded by the Ministry of the Colonies, the City of Amsterdam, the Royal Zoo, and prominent colonial businesses. Do you see how this works? It's like tropical medicine, and these are the schools that you would know, the ones like Manson School. Liverpool, 1898, London, 1898, later in the year. Lisbon, 1902, Antwerp, 1906. In the States, just a little bit later. Tulane was the first in 1911. Harvard, 1913. Tropical medicine is the most influential practice on what we now call global health. And the reason for talking about this sample of countries is because they're the ones who did it. Right? This is the model that other countries later followed. Not because they had the same extractive purposes, but they thought that's what medicine and health look like in the tropics, so we'll study those methods. Okay? All right. This is from the University of California at San Diego. This is the global health period. And what I did is I put global health into Google, and this is the second image result. Now this is what global health looks like according to Google. You like it? I mean, we could spend all day just talking about this one photograph. And I've called it paternalism in my squares, and I haven't shied away from that here because it's this idea that people from one part of the world know better, have better ideas, have more resources, and other people are somewhere behind that through no fault of their own as a state of nature. And these well-meaning people are going to go rectify it. Yeah, you should do that. You should say, yeah, it's wrong. But that's what they think. Okay, they can mean it and be wrong. That's why I teach about it. I don't want people to go do that anymore. Now I'm going to show you about colonialism. This is the same for any extractive, large-scale extractive process. They all have 3 steps. So the oldest of these would be patriarchy. And that's been around for as long as humans have organized civilizations, or collective living, if you don't like that word. They begin with material greed. Somebody takes something just because they can. They have an advantage in strength or stealth, surprise, something. They have an advantage and they use it. So they take something that doesn't belong to them. The second step is to put some of those resources into specialized knowledge that allows them to do it better, faster, on a bigger scale, or justifies the activities, which creates complacency among people who might otherwise resist. And the third step is when these activities and that knowledge bleed out into general culture. Those are 3 steps. So I'll show you how they work. This is the first one. And we're talking about Europeans in Africa primarily because that's the template that the same people followed elsewhere later, including in areas of Asia that were colonized by the same countries. So, the material greed part for colonialism in Africa is that there were these shipping firms. You know, like the couriers, the ones that now send overnight packages. The shipping firms were selling slaves. They bought them in Africa, they took them to the New World. When the slave trade was declared illegal, that is the international slave trade, declared illegal by Great Britain, those shipping businesses didn't have any business. Right? So this is like the DHL, FedEx, UPS, SRF, like they didn't have a business. So they said, we need something else to do. If we can't sell humans, let's take consumer products from Europe and sell them in Africa. That's the start of colonialism. It's a search for unfair trade advantages. Europeans couldn't survive in Africa, so they needed someone to study the specialized knowledge that would let them do so. They started this, what would become colonialism, with coastal trade. And that meant they were selling to people on the coast, traders, take things inland. They weren't making as much money as they thought they could, so they wanted some medical knowledge that would allow Europeans to impose domination, to penetrate. And that's all it is, that's all they wanted. There's more to tell about that story if you want to go through details, and I have papers about all these things. So I'm happy to talk about it. But look, that's one of the material greed things. You get an advantage, and then you invest it, in this case, in medical knowledge. This is the Europeans in Asia story. I hope everyone here knows this, but I want to tell you that aside from myself, I have never heard anyone at my school say opium wars. Never. Yeah, it's like, it doesn't come up. They don't know about it. They don't care. They think it doesn't exist. Well, imagine trying to operate in other parts of the world while knowing nothing. It's Manson's insights that let you do that. You don't have to know about people or their history or their languages or their cultures. You just have to understand insects. What the Europeans did in Asia, and I'm hoping you'll let me condense this, is to say the UK needed silver to buy tea from China. China didn't want to trade because the UK didn't have anything that Chinese people wanted. So they demanded silver for tea. The Europeans didn't have any silver, so they grew opium in India, forcibly addicted Chinese people to get the silver back so they could buy some tea. Okay? And the first opium war, the one that brought Hong Kong Island into British possession, was waged exactly over that. Right? And then the Kowloon Peninsula is the second opium war. And then the new territories, that's after the Russo-Japanese War, the Sino-Japanese War. Right? This should sound familiar, right? And you have a question.
Oh no, just a comment. I didn't have no, but 3 books. Of course, we have Patrick Manson. 3 buildings across the road all made their money from opium trading, and then have superstores in history. 3 of them all did. One of them was assassinated in the central. But,
Now still owns vast holdings in Causeway Bay. I think many of you probably shopped in their shopping centres. But yes, there have people there.
Okay, so this is a good illustration of the permanence that comes from resource appropriation. Like the money doesn't go away. Somebody made it, somebody took it, whatever the resource is, and then they invest it in knowledge that they want. You've probably seen this engraving before. Yeah? You guys seen this before? It's quite famous. So this is the drying room at an opium factory in Patna in India around 1850. You can see how big it is. Just to help you understand the scale, it looks like this. So these are metric tons on the left. And when the English really got their scheme going in the 1820s, they began shipping, these are metric tons, so that's millions of kilograms of opium to China. Like, think of it like the destruction, the money they earned, the wealth that they created for themselves out of the pain and suffering of others. I think of this as one of the worst things that any group has done to another on a large scale in human history. But think of this as resource accumulation by greed. Step 2 is the specialized knowledge I mentioned. One of their answers was tropical medicine. It was like, we have been killing people, stealing stuff, enriching ourselves, and we need knowledge that helps us do it better. That knowledge is tropical medicine, and it focused exclusively on malaria initially, and then on the other major infectious killers. It began in government services, so like in the military, and those people quit, like Manson. You think you want to enrich an entire empire on a government salary? No, that's why he quit. Privatize it. Start schools instead. Earn prestige. More money. Nobel Prizes. You know, he won, right? You guys know this stuff. It's like, these are the mechanisms of empire. Reward people for the money they have generated. Then use that money to create specialized knowledge and reward people who do that best. Tropical medicine schools, they got money from governments and from the private sector. And their promise was to facilitate extraction. The colonial secretary at the London School's founding said, the fight against tropical diseases constitutes the real basis of the politics of colonization. So imagine you're doing this for a set of rapacious capitalist thieves. The health has to be as cheap as possible, which means it has to be as narrow as possible. That's where we get this fascination with pathogens. If you just stop one thing, then you can leave all the other problems in place. It's not a development strategy, it's an anti-development strategy. And it's designed, in this case, to support colonialism only by managing its effects, not by advancing health and well-being. So here's a demonstration. Each bar is 100 per 1,000 deaths in a year. So that's like 10% mortality. And this is the mortality rate of European troops in the pre-tropical medicine era. So think about this. This is like before tropical medicine. European troops, so these are young men in the prime of life, not the richest, not the poorest, but housed, well-fed, and living under military conditions, not while fighting. So they're like pretty good. They had about a 50% chance of dying within a year in Sierra Leone. And you can read the other bars, see what they called the Dutch East Indies. That's sort of like, I don't know, 200 per 1,000, 20% chance. This is in the early part of the 19th century. And then look at this. This is after tropical medicine. Note first that this bar has changed. It's not 100, it's 20 now. So this is 5 times smaller. The least healthful place for Europeans is now Cameroon, spelled with a K. It was a German colony at the time. And that's maybe 40 per 1,000. See what a difference tropical medicine did? Oh, it's amazing. But it's, I mean, it's amazing in this like technical sense. Don't think of it as ending pain and suffering for the world. Think about it as, well, this allows people who are pillaging your houses to stay there and do it longer. It's kind of a mixed blessing. Here's another example, material greed. This is the Wesselton diamond mine in South Africa. It's a 1905 photograph. This mine is still operating. And no, it was not owned by indigenous people in 1905, and it isn't now. Here's step 2. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Can I please ask, can I please ask, was this mine actually, I heard, when I read like Why Nations Fail, I think he was mentioning, or some other books was like, these mines in South Africa was actually linked to a person called Cecil Rhodes.
Yes.
So Cecil Rhodes actually like promoted Oxford scholarship. So
Yep.
as the production of knowledge in Oxford might actually lead to sort of these kinds of, it actually perpetuates these activities, and also you can see how like Britain as a knowledge economy back in the 19th century was trying to promote this this globalist strategy of health.
Yeah, of course. And you know, where do they publish it? In the Lancet, right? The Journal of the Royal Society of Tropical Medicine, in the BMJ. And you know, what kind of knowledge do they want to publish? They want to publish their kind. So it's not overtly racist in the sense that no one else could do it, but it is gated by the type of knowledge, in addition to racism. So if you're publishing the kind of knowledge that advances empire, you can publish in the Lancet now too. But yeah, you know, like who gets to go study in England? People who like roads. People liked by roads. This Cecil Rhodes, you know, his name is Rhodesia. He built railways all over southern Africa to extract resources. Well, those railways are still there, and the Rhodes Scholarship is too. He takes a little bit of his money and he puts it into knowledge generation. This is the kind of knowledge I'm showing you here. It is the kind that makes it sound all right. So let's say you're members of the European public and you're thinking, should we really be taking things from other people who have done nothing to us? And the answer is, according to a thesis like this one, the answer is yes. It says, it is not here contended that any portion of the South African races are on the same mental level as the Aryan-speaking white races, but that education drawing out of such germinative gifts of nature as now lie dormant, that means that people aren't using right now, is saying we are never claiming that black people in South Africa could ever be as smart as white people, but they have more than they're doing right now. That's exactly what this says. And therefore, we should invest in them. So it's like it's right that we occupy because we're smarter and more advanced, and they will thank us later. So if you were a member of the colonizing nation's public and you had doubts about it, there would be a thesis like this. Say, you know, we actually should be there. You know, look at us. We're modern, we're advanced. They need us. They haven't thought of these things. And it works on the other side too. It works against colonized people. That's how you co-opt both publics. Get everyone to accept this version of inequality. So here's a cartoon about the Opium Wars. This is from Puck, an English satirical newspaper from 1885. The text up there says there's no place like home. There's a Chinese man smoking opium. There's someone, presumably his wife, telling him not to. And the caption is showing how a mild serenity like calmness may be maintained under very trying circumstances. So if you had doubts about the wholesale addiction of another population, a cartoon like this makes it a joke. So it's okay. It's funny. And like it fits into this version of Chinese domesticity. Right? That's what you're supposed to think when you see this. And it's what takes away people's resistance to the idea that this should not be done. Therefore, it brings assent. This is the same thing on the Firestone rubber plantation. You can read it later if you want to. I just put it in here because the people generating the knowledge were Harvard professors. See, there it is. They published this book in 1930. And here is where they thank people. They thank the same things, the same entities as you saw on the Royal Tropical Institute. They thank the government. They thank industry. They thank the scientific community. It's like, this is what we're set up to do. So you can read about those. I thought you'd enjoy this one. This is more about step 2 and the climactic theory. So what it's showing you is the dark areas are areas where there's very high vital energy. It's like industrious, smart people. And the lighter areas are where those are very low. So there's all kinds of like pseudo-scientific and pseudo-medical ideas circulating that justify an unequal distribution of resources, that justify what tropical medicine does. So what I'm claiming to you in this lecture is simply that all of global health is still happy in that stage 2. It likes the private sector, it likes diseases, not health. It likes cure and not prevention. It likes anything it can make money off of. It does not like history. It does not like to give up its privileges. It does not like to pay any attention to economic rights. It doesn't have fairness. So this is my last slide, and I want to leave you with these thoughts. We can talk about this actually isn't the last one. This is the one where I told you this before. I told you that these changes are happening now. Donor countries are retrenching, they're becoming more nationalistic and more militaristic. So the what do you do about it part, that's the last slide, is what do we think about it? We can talk about this, but I'm not going to give you easy answers about the decline of global health or how you should navigate in the next world, because they don't exist. I told you before that you would have to fight for a world that's better, and I meant it. So I hope we can begin that struggle by talking about the places we see these forces and the ways that we could imagine together to stand in resistance. So thank you for your attention. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Professor Bund, for this really very eye-opening talk. Please remain on stage because we'll have 10 minutes of Q&A and we will just move some chairs. The Q&A will work if you raise your hand when you have a question. We will have people who can hand you the microphone once I indicate you. Professor Bund, please.
Thank you. See, if you stand for 45 minutes, you can earn a chair.
Yes, I see your question.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing the history. I think that's important, what we learned from the past. We're still talking a lot about global health, and essentially it's the developed country trying to do some work on health issues around the world. China has taken up this space in the last 10 years or so, and with a lot of funding. With the perspective you described to us, how can we do it differently in the name of global health for our future generations?
Well, thank you for that question. It's important to clarify right up front that I've shown you the mainstream legacy. So if you went to the rich countries and you said, what is global health and what are you doing? This is that heritage. This is not the heritage of any international collaboration ever. So if I said, Korea went to Indonesia and did something, that is distinct from this colonial legacy. It's not distinct from the knowledge ecology that was created, but it is distinct from that particular legacy. So your question about China and how we do better, one way to talk about China is to say, well, because of the Opium Wars and other aspects of Chinese-European relations, China is extremely sensitive to domestic interference. So it doesn't do that, right? It goes to other countries and say, well, if you want something, we can do it and we'll take something in return. It's like a trade, right? It isn't like a paternalistic arrangement where they say, well, we'll do it if you do an environmental review. You can argue about whether these things are good or bad, but I'm arguing only that they come out of different historical traditions. And how to do better in all cases begins with respecting each other. It begins with saying that something really unfair happened in the distribution of resources for most of the world. So out of the 210 countries, you probably won't find very many where these forces did not operate. And certain countries, through various mechanisms, some of which I've talked about, I didn't talk about slavery today, but there are lots of mechanisms of unfairness where some countries have accumulated resources at the expense of other people. So I would say that one of the first steps is to ask each other what we want and how we would go forward, what would look fair. In one group, events have been forgotten. In other groups, those are still salient, very salient. And I think that the way we begin to approach this idea of collaboration, it has to start with that respect. It has to start with saying, we're not in a great place. Let's learn about it. Let's learn together. And what do you want? So no matter whether you like this or not, or whether you're at one side or another, it doesn't free you from this legacy. It's like air around us. It's what happened. So all of us in the world, we're affected by this. So I think collectively we find a way forward.
Thanks. Well, yeah, but I can understand what your answer is, but in reality, there is a lot of under-table deal for all this. Essentially, people invest a lot of money in helping other countries in exchange some favor, some influence, and that's unavoidable. One of these, when I was working as a volunteer in China in the year 2000, at least the rumors say that different, the UK Department of International Development actually invested a huge amount of money on HIV/AIDS at the time in exchange for the airport in Hong Kong to be built. So in a way, a lot of these big countries you mentioned to have a budget set aside in order to continue this influence. So it's hard to say all of these without any attachment conditions. So I don't know how we can get away with that.
It's super simple to say how big this problem is and how complicated it is. But I reject that notion. It's just not a reason not to do something. We have to do better. We have to go forward. So I agree with you. It's not straightforward, and that no one here did these things. We all live under the consequences, but none of us actually did it. I'm just asking that we take some recognition of these facts, and then we make some step of rectifying them. So, I don't know what the answer is, because the people who've been harmed need to come up with that answer themselves. But if they said, we want reparations, or we want restitution, or we want an apology, or we want an art contest, it could be anything. It's not for me to say, but I'd like to see that question asked. I'd like people to have the chance to say what they want. And then we go from there.
For the sake of time, we might have two questions. If you raise your hand very high in the back, and also make your questions very succinct.
I'm not a public health student, so I'm coming from this very different way. But one of the sort of most famous global health stories is the elimination of smallpox, which was proposed by the Soviet Union, of course. And at the time, America was very against the World Health Organization, viewing it as a very socialist institution. So clearly in some way there is a way that international development and global health can operate. Even from, I mean, the Soviet Union was also imperialist in very different ways. But there is some way in which it can work differently than it has worked typically with neocolonialism and such. I mean, maybe you're about to tell me that actually there were lots of issues with the elimination of smallpox and it wasn't the kind of success story it's made out to be. But surely there is some way in which progress can be made, and it can be made in a good way.
We might get the second question at the same time, and then we'll let Professor Pump.
Thank you very much. So one of my question is, for example, I thought a lot about what Trump did about the new, like with USAID, but I've never found a answer. How would you explain to the Trump administration how important it is to invest money? Because I feel like they view this investment as they had a very short term response, like, oh, let's cut money, because I read one of your research about Kabul and like the cancer index in Kabul. How do you explain to this type of administrations who don't really know the importance of investing money in healthcare? What would be your argument? Why is it so important to invest money? Because as we can see, they have very short-term analysis mechanisms because they don't think long-term. So how would you explain to them why is it so important to invest money?
I wouldn't. Like, if Trump is a mob boss, like, I would work on his supporters. Like, I'd go to other voters and say, and I have. I'm working on a book about this because I think that trying to change public opinion, trying to reassert public values, I think that's the ultimate driver. So, Trump is not going to change his mind. So I think that would be a waste of time. It's intuitive that you would try, but I think the forces that have driven him to do what he does, like, those are lifelong in his case, and I think he's not going to listen. So I would just give up on that, and I'd say let's talk to the voters and try to reestablish the ideas of America that most Americans actually share. The voters liked USAID. It's just Trump did. I mean, the other question about smallpox is, you could think about some of these extractive forces that I've discussed. Think about it like this giant prehistoric dinosaur that comes and steps on a bunch of stuff and takes a big crap, kills people because it's so big. But then nice flowers grow. It's not like everything bad happens because of some initial injustice or bad event. Good things can happen. I'm sure you look closely at colonialism or slavery and you'll find nice stories too. Now, I'm not going to make a proportion of it because that would be vanishingly small, but there is progress from those times that we need now. There is advances that we need to learn from. And it's not wrong to use it. It's just helpful to acknowledge that we're not in the best place that we could be. It's like if I cut off one of your arms and you got really good with the other hand, you wouldn't be thanking me. I say, oh, look how good that hand is. Yeah, we'd have other things to talk about. I think about it like that. And I'm happy to sit here. I don't have to go. So if you
I would be very happy to continue, but I'm afraid our colleagues at the front would probably drag us off at some stage. So we will have to wrap up our Q&A now, but we will then have Professor Bishai to come on stage. We have a small token of our appreciation, some photographs. But let's give another round of applause to Professor Long.
So we wanted to give you something to remember, and so this is a commemorative plate with the Hong Kong University on it that you'll remember us by. So thank you very much.
Oh, look, it's got Manson's picture on it.
This is Lo Kyu Hall
I love it.
At our main campus.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful. Thanks.
Invite Mr. Zhao on stage as well.
thank you, everyone. This concludes our lecture today. On behalf of the School of Public Health, we would again like to thank Professor Bump for his very engaging and interesting talk. Thank you, Professor Bump.
So as advertised, you're welcome to come down if you had a question about global health, political economy, Trump, the Takemi Fellowship. Please come and share.